This is the Intentional Human Podcast, and I am your host, Adrian Cavada, and my personal life mission is to optimize the human experience one story at a time. Recording is in progress.
Got it.
Oh, yeah. Well, this is episode 2 of the Intentional Human Podcast, and I have my friend Mark. We actually met in a coaching program we did online. You're from Canada, right?
That's right. Vancouver, British Columbia. So it's West Coast.
Yeah, and I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. So it's different parts of the world.
Oh man.
It's like the power of the internet. Get to connect with so many different people. We're here. We're going to talk a little bit about limiting beliefs today, and just about it's a true, authentic story. I'll let Mark kind of just introduce himself a bit and kind of give us a framework of what we're going to talk about today.
Thanks, Adrian. I really appreciate being here. It's a really great opportunity. Thanks so much for organizing that and allowing me to come on. And my name is Mark DeSanti. I go by Mark D most of the time. People who know me and don't know me call me that. I am here to tell you a little story about, my journey from lost and dark to what's current day status, which is thriving and some days just surviving because I'm human. So essentially, yeah, let's start with, what I'm passionate about. So I'm really passionate about helping men, specifically fathers. So I help men who are lost in fatherhood, who have lost their way, lost themselves, and feeling trapped, walking on eggshells. And I help them uncover the skills and the experience that they already have and build a strategy for them to turn their dad pains into father gains. I've been using that lately. And I do that within 3 months. I'm able to help a man turn around. And all of that comes from my own personal story, which I'm excited to share about here. I've been a municipal servant here in Canada for 15 years. I love service. That's one of my languages of love, being in service. And my background is essentially in coaching. I was a corporate trainer for about a decade, organizing and designing curriculum for different organizations, starting back in Ontario, which is out east, a whole country away. And just really got passionate about watching people get things, like having that moment of the light switch turning on and just feeling like really like that was what really drove me. I just got like a lot of energy from that. And I just love those aha moments, especially in the corporate world where I did most of my coaching and training originally. You'd be dealing with a new employee and, they'd be worried about their new job, whether they'd be able to keep it, if they're gonna be able to handle whatever it is, maybe they didn't have all the skills when they started and they were kind of concerned about the journey. And then you're in a classroom with them and you're teaching whatever it is, anything from the boring stuff of policy, which is needed, to a little more interesting stuff in terms of like customer service or, everyday life and like what their job had in terms of stake in the company and how it affected the rest of the company. But at some point for almost every student, there'd be that moment where they went from that kind of fear place to like, oh, I can do this. And that's what I really love. And so now I'm doing that with fathers because I know from my personal experience that, being a new parent, not just fathers, but, my experiences as a father can just kind of like really get on top of you and just get heavy on your shoulders. It's like, kind of becomes a monkey on your back. And there's a whole like slew of different things that come into play there. Everything from uncertainty, fear of the future, inability to communicate or process your emotions, new emotions you never freaking had before, like just the kind of love that comes from becoming a parent is unique. It's not better than any other love, but it's like unique and it really flips a switch. So, I don't want to see men lose the ability to hang on to what that does for them because other things weigh them down. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Oh yeah, bro.
Yeah. It's been a crazy journey for me because I was a single party animal essentially till I was like in my early 30s, and in the back of my head, I always wanted a family. Like I always wanted to have, kids. Like I came from a pretty strong European background where, family is sort of like the thing. And, and it just took me so long to kind of like feel like I was ready, but I realized that there's no such thing as ready, right? You work on you're always doing the work. And while you do that, you're getting more and more ready, or you have more and more tools. And that's actually the important part. So, it wasn't until I took a sabbatical and went traveling for 18 months, in my mid-30s, and I came back and I was like, okay, universe, I'm ready. I'm ready now. I'm finally ready. And the universe gave me a family, like instantly.
Oh shit.
It was like, I opened my heart and I was ready. I felt like I was ready. And I met a woman, she had a child already, and she was a single mom. We hit it off, and we met online, kind of classic current story in that sense. And the beginning of our relationship wasn't the usual for me, or it wasn't usual, so it felt different. But I'll tell you, as much personal work as I'd done on myself, and as much soul searching and experience I had, I was already in my mid-30s at that point. Having a child, or even a woman with a child, both of them to reflect differently, was a whole new level of learning. So that's I always say that's where my real journey began. But my real journey began back in my teens, and being lost and messed up as a teenager, and not really knowing what my direction was, and hadn't really gone through the process of figuring out what I wanted in life. And I think that's probably why the journey from then till now was sort of the road less traveled in that sense.
Gotcha. Well, kind of dive into that a little bit. Like, who were you before this Mark B that's standing before us, or sitting before us?
That's an interesting question. We went through an exercise. I know you've done it well as well. So I'll just tell the people listening or watching right now a little bit about it. We just did a visionary kind of exercise to kind of think about Mark in my current state prior to the exercise, and Mark in the future state, right? So we call it 2.0 or 3.0, or and my initials are actually MAJC. So
MAJC.
Mark Anthony John Christopher, and then my last name is DeSanti. So
Magic. That's
right. So I started calling Mark 3.0 Magic D. Like he's magic, right? And it's funny because when I can step into 3.0, it actually does feel like magic, and 3.0 has to keep evolving, because 3.0 is slightly ahead of, slightly in the future of whatever this Mark is. So it's like this kind of like tingly, awesome sensation. But I never felt that before. I didn't have I had a different ability to feel it differently, I guess is how I'd say it, prior to having a child. But the Mark before this Mark, he lacked the ability to receive love. That's what I would say. And I lacked the ability to receive love, to own that properly. I'll use the first person. And as a teenager and as a young man in his 20s, it was all ego. Everything was ego, and I was doing a lot of like work. I always had jobs. I was fortunate. I always had jobs that had benefits. So I would, have therapy help. I definitely experimented in psychedelics, and I've seen God in many different forms and ways. Some of them wholesome, and some of them not. And I've been through a lot of crazy stories. And so that builds character, that builds experience. You learn from it. I went to university for marketing and business, and I didn't finish it. I just, the university is not my thing. Yeah, and actually I got voted into the student council, and then I couldn't be on the student council because my grade, like the next semester when I served, my grades weren't good enough. So they actually gave me a chance, and then I got to go back for a semester to kind of prove myself. But then I was on student council, and all I wanted to do was like deal with the social aspects of life.
Yeah,
and wasn't focusing on my books. And I got a lot of chances. I've had a lot of chances in life. That's something that I really respect and have honor for. I feel like I've had a guardian angel on my shoulder so many times. But while I was going to university and then all these, despite having a good time and I knew I was at fault, it was my, I owned not continuing in school. I kept trying to go back. And I think I went back 3 times. And then the third time I just said, okay, obviously this isn't for you, but just prove to yourself, just prove to yourself you can do it. You keep saying, I can do it if I wanted to, but and I held myself to the fire. And so I had 1 semester of like 80s plus courses. And then that was it. I dropped out. So that wasn't for me. And I started, I went to look for work at that point, and I was doing a whole bunch of side work and volunteer work, and I was partying. The rave scene was huge at that point. I'm at that age where we didn't call it EDM. There was no EDM at that point. Each type of music had its own name, and you better use the right name, or else someone's going to jump down your throat. That's probably where they started using the phrase EDM. Too many fights. So I love dancing. I love music. All of my friends were DJs and musicians and artists, and it's just like a really full creative life. And there was a dark side of it because the journey took me through drugs. So at first it was it's a sort of classic gateway story. Although I would say I don't agree with that whole analogy personally. Yeah. But, it laid true for me. So messed around with some mushrooms in high school, a little bit of LSD, smoked weed. And then, got into some other stuff when I got a little bit older. After deciding not to go back to school, I was full force, working and partying. That was like kind of my life at that point. I was making a lot of poor decisions. I was a pretty lost young man. And mainly because I was searching. Like I was just looking externally for everything. So, I eventually became addicted. It wasn't just the lifestyle that was bad. It was like I actually specifically became addicted. And I was a functioning meth addict for, probably 3 years, I'd say. And we're talking like it's my cup of coffee in the morning kind of thing,
Gotcha.
So, that's a dark place. I think that's as functioning as I was. And actually, I spoke with someone who worked with me at the call center I worked at the time, and they had no clue, but a lot of beauty came out of that journey. To this day, I have a format for myself that is my way of grounding and being connected to the source. Like, I have a phrase called STIGs. So I said my friends are all like DJs and stuff. So one day I'm at the record shop that my buddy owned, and I'm going, what I'm allowed to, I can swear, right?
Yeah, you can swear. Yeah, do you, bro?
I don't know. I got kids. I got to ask, right? 25 cents. That's like my swearing these days. So anyway, I'm like, why the fuck do hip hop artists get to make up words? Like, I want to make up a word,
Yeah.
Diddy was like doing his thing, saying whatever he would, Jay-Z, like he's got slang coming out of every album, and I was just like, I want to make up a word. So I did. I just made up this word STIGs, STIGS. And it was like meant to be the positive version of fuck, right? So you can use fuck anywhere, right? I fucking did this. Hey, I'm fucking here. Fuck up. What, like you can.
Yeah.
But Stigs, it's like, yo, Stiggy, what's up? Oh, I'm Stigging. Oh, last night was a Stigginess party. Like it was like meant to be really positive. And I had about a crew of about 15, 20 people saying it at one point,
Oh, shit.
Yeah. And then there's this British driving show. I think it's called something Gear. It's pretty popular. I'm not a driving guy, but I think it's called something Gear. It's like 3 dudes and they talk about driving. Anyway, in season 3, someone writes to me. I never watched the show, but they wrote me. They said they stole your word, and they had created a character called Stigs. And so I felt my ego really liked that. Like it was like, yeah, and he was like the coolest driver. He never showed his face. He had like sunglasses, dark vision visors. So anyway, this like persona, like of awesomeness. So feel free to use the word Stigs whenever you want. But Stigs came from another mantra. So I would go to work, and I'd be like this, right? I'd be twitching. For those who can't see, I wouldn't necessarily be exactly twitching, but I was like so high in anxiety, so high in stress and inability to be aware. Like I hadn't slept sometimes for a couple of days. And I was just like, I want to make up a word. So I did. I just made up this word Stigs, STIGS. And And I just like was like, I'm gonna get fired from this job. Fuck. Like I can't. I like this job. I'm good at it. You know, I'm super good. I was like top 1, 2 in the whole center of 100 some people.
Yeah.
And 3 things came out of this job that were amazing for a future mark positivity. So I just chill, right? I'm feeling twitchy. Just chill. Keep it real, because you may or may not know drug addicts lie a lot. Sometimes not to everybody else, but always to themselves. So just chill, was calm down, take a breath, you know, center yourself, all those things. But at the time it was like, it literally just meant, Mark, just chill. Like just chill. And then keep it real. I was like, okay, what's going on in this moment? You don't have to be paranoid about your boss talking to you. You don't have to be, you know, telling yourself lies. Like whatever the state is, that's okay. And then the last one was coming back with fury. So it was like fire coming out of the phoenix, you know, like rising like a phoenix. But those 3 things are like really hard to say in a moment of being like completely anxiety ridden, right? Like you got to remember 3 things and like, you know, and so it just transformed one day. And like, I was like freaking out. There was a couple people asking me for stuff and we were talking about in a meeting. And I just went like this with my arms, like my hands like this. So for those who can't see, I'm putting them out kind of like in a praise you or hallelujah, hands accepting a gift kind of manner. And I just said out loud in front of everybody, just remember. And everyone was like, what is he talking about? But the word just came out of me. And so just remember comes from my exploration days. So I came to believe, and I still believe to this day, that we are born with universal knowledge. Our souls and our minds know everything at inception, everything in the entire world. And as we grow older and as we come into this world from our mother's wombs, and as we are influenced by other people and grow older and older, we forget that universal knowledge bit by bit. And I believe we're put on this planet to first remember, like help ourselves remember, like remind ourselves, and to help others be reminded. So when you open your hands, you accept the message of the universe and you just say, eyes closed, take a breath. You just say, just remember. And whatever comes to your mind, that's what you go with. You don't fight it. So like you're fighting with your partner. I'm going to use a troubled dad, you know, situation here. You just finished yelling at your kid and you know you shouldn't, you know, not that you should ever yell at your kid, but you didn't like what happened. Then your partner's on you for yelling at your kid. Your kid's out of the room. You're like ready to go off, you know, off the hook. And just like, just remember. And then it might be like, you haven't eaten. That might be what came to your mind, right? You know, like I can't control myself. I can't regulate. I got to take care of me, right? So that's just it might also be like this morning, your boss had a difficult conversation with you. So you might go, oh yeah, I'm irritated like all crazy, right?
Yeah.
And it might just be like, hey, it's your mom's birthday next week. Like, don't forget. And then you're like, oh yeah, whatever, right? So whatever comes to mind, you got to go with it. So just remember, that's the first thing that came out of that workplace. And actually, you know, the hell we're talking about this, that workplace was like a foundation for a lot of what the Mark D in front of you is. So the second thing was Stigs. So Stigs was around that time. I took phone calls from construction guys who had to make requests to go get underground utilities located. So I was good at my job. Like I knew how to get those guys tell me what I needed. And, you know, the calls were as short as possible. And on longer calls, I would doodle. And so I'd, you know, my tiny little cubicle, the walls weren't even, you know, tall enough to, you saw everybody else, but I had all these like graffiti style posters on the wall. And one of them said Stigs, you know, as big as can be, you know, on a large piece of paper. So I was very good at the job. I started training other agents. Those agents were good at the job. The head of the organization wanted to sit with me to figure out what I was doing so I could think about it. So I worked the afternoon. She came and sat with me. Lo and behold, that one day when I was sitting with the boss, not a single call comes in. And I'd never met her before. And, you know, I was who I was at the time and she was who she was. I was very nervous and it was kind of awkward. And I got like one call in an hour and a half. So it was like small talk. And she goes, what's that on the wall? And was she pointing at the Stigs poster? And I freaked out because I was embarrassed. And just out of nowhere, I just went, oh, that's my mantra. And I go, strength, truth, integrity, growth, stability.
Oh shit.
Just like channeled right out of my mouth. And she goes, "Oh, that's interesting." I was like, "Okay." So that's stuck. That has been my value system ever
Say
since.
it again.
Strength, truth,
Truth,
integrity,
integrity.
growth, stability.
Oh yeah,
Those are my virtues. I don't know if they're actually virtues, but they're my values.
yeah.
And whenever I get off track, I just remind myself that I have that foundation to work from. So those were the top two. I don't know. I've been talking a lot. You have any thoughts?
Oh man, that was cool, man. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Definitely the just remember. I did it while you were talking about it, and the thing that came up to me was like be free. Like immediately just said be free.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, dude, I'm gonna steal that. That's like a really good
It's
tool.
not stealing. It's for everybody. It's the universe's. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing. I am curious though, like what moment in that journey of like dealing with your addiction and having these other things that's happening in your life, like when did you, well, not when, but what moment did you just choose, like, I want to live differently? Like, what was that intentional choice that you made?
Oh, unfortunately, that day came much later than where I'm at the story. Yeah, I think I always knew I wanted to live different. What made me actually change was having a child. So I got off meth. I was a very active, functional, large using meth addict for 2 to 3 years. Got off of that. I was still doing ecstasy sometimes, some other recreational drugs, and cocaine. And I thought cocaine would never have a hold on me. That's how I always felt. But technically speaking, the mental hold it had on me never really released until my responsibilities changed. So I was only ever responsible for myself. And I can remember the last night I used cocaine, and someone who was an acquaintance, didn't know me very well, but we had a kind of a tight male bond.
Mm.
He just said at one point when it was appropriate, like when it would not, I don't want to say sting, but stick the most, he just said, "Remember, there's a kid involved now." And I wasn't even exclusive with my partner at that point. We were still kind of like, I hadn't met her child or anything like that. Well, maybe I had met him, but the point was we weren't even necessarily exclusive at that point. But it just shifted my paradigm, and I realized at that point, like, I didn't want to be that person anymore. Even if I didn't stay with this woman with a child, I kept telling myself I was ready for family, but obviously I wasn't. If that was the case, right? So I'd say that was probably the moment.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Now that's about drug addiction. Now, if you want to talk about having a passion for my business or for the work I'm doing, that's been an evolution. And I don't know if I could pinpoint one moment, but there was a night where, so I have a stepson who's 10 now, and my biological son is 5. And my stepson's an amazing child, like just such a great reflection. He's got such a strong personality, which is really good for me. And he always has accepted me, that looks different in different phases of our relationship, but he's always accepted me, and we have an amazing bond. And he was the trigger that I just told you about, right? Like, there's a child involved now. And the second trigger was my biological son was born. And it wasn't even the first time I held him or watching him be born in our living room in a pool, or, watching my stepson hold him. There's all these beautiful, amazing moments we have. But it was this one night, we had a rotation so my wife could make sure she gets sleep in. Like, during the week, she'd stay up with the baby, and then Thursday through Sunday I would, so she could catch up, and I didn't have to go to work the next day, so it worked. And I remember the second night I was on my own. The first night was a little different. I think we both fell asleep pretty easy, and that was it. The second night, and we had a really easy baby. I always feel bad talking to other parents because, like, that baby was easy like compared to what I hear. But that second night, just would not sleep. And I didn't know what was okay. Like I didn't want to wake up my wife and go, can I do this? Like I was like a brand new dad, no training, no nothing. There was like a class we took, and it was like, I didn't even know if I could let the baby fall asleep on my chest while I was on the couch. Like, would that be safe? Like,
Yeah.
I remember I built this like pillow fortress, but before the pillow fortress, earlier in the night, I'm holding the baby and I'm dancing and I'm just swaying. And I can't sing. I'm tone deaf, but I'm singing to the baby. And there was this thing, something clicked about how that baby absolutely needed me.
Mm-hmm.
And my heart opened up to love more than it ever had in the past. The fire was lit inside of me, for being better. Like, I just want to be better. I just want to keep being better for both my kids and my partner and myself, obviously, because that's the standard. So that would be the second moment, I think.
Gotcha. Okay. So these moments happen, you get triggered into, I guess, a new reality, kind of being pulled or called to do something. And at that moment, like, what was that process like? That, I guess, a lot of people call it like a healing journey or like a self-discovery, self-exploration. What was that like for you? Like, what like transpired from those moments?
A lot of stumbling. So, I think the thing is, like, every moment's growth, right? So my partner and I, we moved in together within like 3 months of knowing each other. She had a kid. I was almost instant dad. She was in school at the time. And so there was like some really quick growth. And actually, I really like your question for this reason, because I think I did pretty good from meeting my elder Phoenix to Gus being born, because I was like in the zone. Like, it was sort of like, for whatever reason, I didn't feel pressure.
Yeah.
And then there was that moment I just told you about where that baby relies on me. And not to say I wasn't showing up before the baby was there. I was showing up. In fact, I think I was showing up better, because when I had that realization, I actually started to get weighed down by this pressure, this unheard pressure. And I don't use this phrase because I don't like the potential ramifications of this label, but angry dads, right? We talk about angry dads. I think of Homer Simpson saying, "Oh, you little," like, choking out Bart Simpson when I hear angry dads. I think there was a skit even on The Simpsons. But I work with men who are lost in fatherhood. So I stopped hanging out with my buddies. I started hanging with all my friends. I thought that's what I had to do. I didn't even know how to manage time so that I could hang out with them. I didn't have a clear division of what my boundaries were or what my relationship responsibilities were in terms of how much I need to be around. And that was all my inability to communicate properly, ask questions, figure out, just even discuss it. I just kind of bared down and did what I thought I needed to do without talking about it with anyone, right? And I think that's the seed of angry dads, because that's the beginning of the journey where you don't release the first thing you need to get off your chest. It's that uncertainty of what is it? Like, I think I understand what I'm responsible for, whether it's the bills or, making sure my kids, are disciplined. I don't mean like punished. I mean like having discipline. Or what did my European father do? What did his dad do? Kind of thing. So it was just sort of what I thought I knew, but I didn't know what I didn't know. And so that slowly became more and more weight on my shoulders. And I think that's I think that's my answer to your question, is what was it? What was that journey like? It was full of weight and heaviness and pain, like unspoken pain. I call it the dad rut, right? You lose yourself. You as I said, I was a single party animal right up until I met my partner. And so that's not to say I didn't have other partners, but there was nothing in that sense of responsibility and whatnot. So that evolution or transformation was full of pain. It was full of pain because I didn't have anyone to reach out to. I didn't feel like I had someone to reach out to. I had friends I could talk to, kind of thing, but I wasn't seeing them as much. And probably when I did, I wasn't pleasant. You know, so I would say that's my initial answer to your question. Is it was full of a lot of pain and darkness. Now, that doesn't take away from all the joys, right? Like having a child, having a family, and I think sometimes that is the supplemented aspect for the pain you're feeling as a father. So for me, that's what I really want to express to dads out there who are listening is if you're feeling like you're, you know, you don't have a way out in terms of figuring out what you need to do or don't have the tools, or if you feel like you're walking on eggshells, like really explore communication, because if you can talk about what's happening for you and you have the ability to connect with yourself, then you're going to connect with everybody else. And then you don't have to rely on the connection of I bring in the money or I, you know, whatever the label you've given yourself. And you're able to rely on the connections you have versus the template you've put yourself in or the archetype you've put yourself in. Does that answer your question? I think
Yeah, I think so. I do have a second part to that.
Yeah.
So like you have all this weight, you have this, like, I guess kind of like a growing pressure over time because you're realizing your responsibility as a man, as a father now. And, you know, like I have a background in exercise science. So I'm an exercise scientist, I'm all about wellness. I've done social work. I've done a lot of like this work in terms of working with families, working, on like the individual themselves, both on the mental, physical, and a spiritual level.
Right.
And I think it always boils down to like, how do we either overcome this resistance that either we put onto ourselves or whatever's been given to us by the universe? And I'm just curious, like, how did you either overcome or just gain strength to even carry that resistance further along the path?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very good point, Adrian. I think just a great way to position that experience. I definitely leaned on my past experiences. Like I went through a lot of crazy stuff. Like there's some pretty interesting stories some of them are pretty scary. So a lot of things, like whatever I was going through, and this is another symptom of angry dads. So, and I want to be clear, angry dads don't mean they're yelling. They don't need to be yelling to be angry dads, or they don't need to be scolding their kids or fighting with their wife to be angry. Angry dads can just really be disconnected or quiet or grunting, disgruntled, don't know how to respond to the cues that their partner gives them. Like there's so many facets of angry dads. So I hope everybody can recognize that I don't mean actual anger. And that's why I stopped using the phrase, but it's hard not to go back to it. Because I think that we can all relate to that archetype, whether it was a friend's dad we saw, or, like even just the guy working behind the counter, you kind of go, oh, I wonder if that guy's got kids. He looks tired, with no judgment, just an observation.
Yeah.
I think I probably heard that myself. So, the symptom is just wait it, just bear the weight. That is what a man does. And so the last part was, how did you get so far with it? And that was it. I just bared it, right? Carried it on my shoulders, dragged it like an ox, through the plow fields. And it wasn't until I recognized that was affecting my relationships, both with my kids and my wife, because I wasn't showing up as, I transformed into Mark 2.0, the middle Mark between what you see here and who was the beginning of the story. And on the way there, I lost all the good parts of the original Mark, of the pure, fun, loving party Mark. I mean, not everything about pure love, fun, loving party Mark is bad,
Let's party.
That's right. Well, like I have a dance party with my kids on a regular basis, I love dancing, right? So that's just one aspect, but that was what happened. And then my wife and I, we did therapy for a little while. I did lots of solo therapy. I've been part of men's groups for a decade now. I even ran one myself for a short while. And, I really feel like bearing witness to other men is a great way to lift that burden um, men, and often this is a challenge in our relationships with women, like to solve things, right? Like we have to come up with solutions.
For real.
But that's right, right? Yeah, I know I'm not making that one up. And what we don't always realize with our partners is they just want to be heard sometimes. They don't want a solution. In fact, I think everybody feels better when they come up with their own solutions.
Yeah.
And, there might be a man or two out there, and probably, I know for sure, like there's been so many times I look at my kid and I go, your mom was right again. And he's like, oh, are we going to tell her? I go, of course we're going to tell her. Where'd you get that? And then I go, so I know in the opposite direction, you have a talk, your partner's talking about a challenge, and then you go, oh, maybe you can do this. And it looks like it doesn't even go in an ear. Just like,
yeah.
And in fact, if you try to tell the same solution again, it might even cause a little bit of a friction or fight or something. Mm-hmm. And then 2 weeks later, hey, this thing worked out. I did this. And it was the thing you suggested. Right. So, and that's not isolated, as I said, from men to women. It goes both ways.
Yeah.
So, I don't think men always recognize that sometimes just being heard is all we need. And it's my biggest challenge as a coach for dads. I'm so used to witnessing men. And I feel like I'm always going to hold that space for witnessing. Now, this being in the nutrition industry, it's one thing to know what nutrition to eat or what workout to do to get healthy physically. It's another thing to actually do it. And that's implementation is why people need guidance and coaching and mentorship. And that's the biggest part. So for me, the way that I got out of it was to find responsible ways to be witnessed until I came up with my own solutions. And the challenge with getting from bearing the burden or carrying the burden to opening your heart and mind and being open to love again and loving yourself and feeling the worth and having the right things to say to your partner in those times of tumultuous conversation. The difference between those two is having the bridge and being able to speak the words that get you there. Because I start here, I'm bearing the burden, and my partner asks me for an opinion, I grunt, right? Mm-hmm. Because I'm either afraid of the outcomes of what I say, or I'm afraid I'm going to say the wrong thing, or I don't even know how I feel because I don't have the ability to process that.
Yeah.
And so I developed those three pieces, right? So through connection, communication, and collaboration, I allow a man to open up into the bridge. And so that's my journey. That's how I got there. And two things really helping with that: working on self-image, self-esteem, self-confidence, self-love. That's the number one foundation, I think. When I look back, I said at the beginning of the story, like I was just a young man who didn't have the ability to receive love. Not only did I not have the ability, I was like searching validation constantly, right? Like picking up ladies, being a braggart, like ego. Like I love partying because I am hilarious at a party. Everybody's sitting around laughing. I'm like living it up, feeling great about it. And that's all just up here, right? But what hits here is when you make a tight connection. I think about the two differences. Like everybody wanted to be at the pre-party with Mark, but what Mark loved was during the party, at the back of the room, when you're taking a breather, having a bottle of water, and you connect with a stranger because they're like, hey, like, I like that move. And you talk about their move. And then you get into a conversation, and it's not even a romantic connection. It's just like, I met this stranger and we touched each other by talking and connecting. And so I know I had that, right? But I'd lost those connections through my bearing of the burden. And that's what I think is most important, is that we find ways to release that. So it takes the right tools, it takes the right experience. And most humans have that within them because that's part of the universal knowledge. But uncovering it and putting it together as a strategy is a whole different story.
Gotcha. Okay, so that kind of brings us to kind of like present, Mark, right? Like you're doing this work currently. I know that we're both still building our coaching practices and our clientele and stuff like that. So like, how are you applying and implementing pretty much the skill set that you developed over time, like now to this present Mark 3.0?
Oh yeah, it's a practice. I mean, I apply it daily. Two things that I focus on are self-practice, like so my self-care, physical, mental well-beings. And then I constantly remind myself of the reason I'm doing this. So one thing I had the blinders on about when I was kind of starting this journey was where in my life I wasn't open, right? I'm pretty self-aware. Like when you do as many psychedelic drugs as I do, you can't really be too closed off. I mean, unless you're kind of like to the point where you're just reversed. But that in itself is a blessing and a curse. If you're not taking action, it's an absolute curse because it just burns on you till you're depressed out of your mind. And it's a blessing because it opens your eyes, but you got to take action. So there were so many places I was aware of in my life where I could do the work. I developed my leadership aspect, right? And that's why I actually did coaching there first, because self-leadership really, I was drawn to that. And when I was doing leadership coaching, I loved watching young leaders learn how to navigate up. And I always connected it back to my navigation with my partner, because, we put labels on each other and it's like, I'm talking to the boss in a way. So for me, I practice self-love so that I can stand next to my partner. And if we're standing next to each other, we're collaborating. And so that's what I'm constantly working towards, because I'm not saying she's the boss. She doesn't try to be the boss. But when I don't feel connected, my output is control. I try to control. So then we're not equal because I'm controlling. Or if I'm searching for validation, then she's the upper hand. I'm not saying she's trying to get the upper hand, but that's the way. So that positioning in relationship completely is my focus in terms of how to practice. So I have to be at one with myself to do that. And then that plays out with my kids as well, right? So there's a difference between authoritarian parenting and authoritative parenting. Authoritative is like, do this or else. Authoritarian is, I love you, and this isn't acceptable. Here's some other manners of going about this. And when I'm not connected, I'm authoritative and I'm totally angry dad, to be honest.
Yeah.
I've come a long way. I mean, I don't see those moments very often these days, but I would say the first year or 2 years of my biological son being born, I always, talk to my stepson and say, I apologize. You were the guinea pig. Like I didn't have my shit together. Sometimes I'll hear him talking to my younger kid and he'll say something and I'll be like, those are my words. That's my voice and those are my words. And I'll go, okay, come here, buddy. Listen, I taught you that. We both got to unlearn it. Let's do this differently. Let's have some love for our family, kind of thing. So it's about that. It's about self-love. It's about constant practice to be connected. And the third thing I would say is forgiving and being easy on yourself for those moments. So, because it doesn't help to add burden, right? Every time you feel guilty or shame, you're adding more burden to the cycle. So
sweet. Oh yeah, man. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's I'm pretty young myself. I'm 26, so and I'm a young buck.
Yeah, good one on you, man. You're doing such good stuff, man. I admire you so much. You got a creative flow like nobody, and you're just inspiring. So that's amazing, man.
I appreciate it, dude. It's definitely been one hell of a journey. Because I'm in a similar situation actually. Because my girlfriend has 2 kids, and I went from having no kids and not really having any intention to be a quote unquote a father.
Yeah.
Kind of like overnight, like, oh damn, like we're gonna move in. We're already moved in. Like her kids are coming tomorrow, and it's gonna be one. Yeah, thank you, dude. It's one hell of a journey. Like I already have a bunch of ideas. I'm excited, but at the same time, like it's also kind of scary. Like I'm gonna be a quote unquote father figure, but like not saying like their current father isn't gonna be in the picture or anything like that, but. Since they're going to be in this environment, like I'm here to support them. Yeah, like I'm here to support them. And it's definitely a bit of a mindfuck because, again, like I'm going from having no true intentions to even have children to having 2, a 3 and a 10-year-old. So,
good years, man. Good years. I can help you with both of those years if you ever want. Just let me know.
Yeah, I'll hit you up.
Okay, so like, hey, listen, I've done all the talking here, and I appreciate your patience and hearing my stories. Let me ask you, like, if you don't mind, what is the biggest what's your biggest projected challenge or fear, whatever you want to call it? Like, what's the thing that you're wondering about?
I think it's adjusting to change, but I'm more focused on the older kid,
Okay.
of how she's going to adjust to everything.
Okay.
Because she's a bit more aware. She's smart, like just has like a natural like sense of intelligence. And
they still do.
Yeah. So I already bonded really well with the younger one. She literally calls me my Adrian. Like she's all excited when like she always refers to me like thinks she loves me more than my girlfriend. And yeah, the older one, like, cause I worked with children before, like I said earlier, I've been, in social work. I've, been a behavioral coach for autistic children. So I understand children, I know how to really communicate with them, but it's a little bit different when you're in this position. Like before I was just like, I'm here to enter the house, work with them for a couple hours and I bounce. Now it's just like, we're living together. We're interchanging like our knowledge of the world. So, and yeah, I think kind of stems into like my own upbringing too. Like I want to make sure like I don't fuck up like anything. Like I want to make sure I do the best I can to be a positive male figure, as well as just not being a father figure. I want to be more of like, I'm here to support you. I don't want to take on the role necessarily as a father, but more of like, I am a positive male role model. I'm going to teach you some stuff like gardening, how to like kind of just take care of your life. Like that's what my dad did for my sisters, because my two older sisters are not my dad's biological children. So and my dad, when he had me, was about my age. Yeah, so like I'm in his shoes pretty much. And the funny thing is, they're the same age gap, like of my two older sisters.
Shit, man.
So
it's funny the world brings like that cycle.
Yeah, it's a trip, dude. And yeah, I'm here, and I've learned a lot from my own like father, like in terms of like his way of thinking what a man should do and his way of parenting. But it is a new time and a new age and new everything, right? Especially with society and all that type of thing. So that's kind of like where I'm at. Like, how do I go about like this new role that I've taken on, pretty much?
Yeah, man. Awesome. Well, hey, kudos for you to even be thinking the way you're thinking. Like, what I'm not hearing is like overwhelm. Like you have points of concern. You're thinking about stuff, and like you're not even concerned, but just like things you realize you got to review. Right? That's awesome, man. Really great book. I don't know if I want to give advice. I'm not going to give any of my own advice, but I read a book recently, which I wish I'd read 6 years ago when I met my partner. It's called Surviving and Thriving in Step Families.
Send it over.
Send it to you. It's a little dated. I think the studies all ended in 2005 or something like that. But it's so interesting because I think it's for therapists. So if you've done social work and something, that'll really have like a good construct for you. But she doesn't just say like, hey, stepmoms are different or stepdads are different than regular, than usual dads or whatever the word she uses. It's appropriate. She then goes, this is how, and this is what to do about it. And these are the possible outcomes. And these are the result. These are the responses. Like, it's just like such a handbook in that sense. She does a really good job of illustrating how they're different, like in primary relationships where it's original mother and father, every relationship book says focus on the mother, like the parent relationship, like that relationship's the most important. But in step families, they actually pose that it's not. And there's ways to do, there's like kind of transitions between relationships and how to do stepfather relationships and so yeah, just amazing book, man. Just, it's a great read anyway, just because it's curious. It follows 13 different families. And what I was gonna say is, knowing you, what I know about you, you've already got all the things in check. It's like about your life, right? Like I came in like, I gotta fix, like not fix, but I gotta like take charge of this family and make sure things go okay. Like, whereas you're already saying like, I'm gonna teach you some stuff in life and like do these things. So that's the right mind frame. Absolutely, man. So don't lose any of the Adrian. That's awesome. Like from the process. That's my only advice for you.
Yeah, thanks, dude.
It's awesome.
Cool, man. Yeah, I appreciate you for sharing, dude. Definitely insightful, definitely kind of eye-opening on some things, some new skills. Just remember.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
No, not at all. I appreciate having me on here. I just
How
have
can
so
they
much
get in contact with you?
Oh yeah, well, okay, great, thanks. If you want to post, I think I sent you a link. You can post on the podcast here, but you can just add me on Facebook. It's me, Mark D, MEMARKDEE, to follow me on Facebook, and that's probably the best place to find me. I'm either Mark D, MERKDEE on every social platform, and if I couldn't get that, it's me, Mark D. So I started my videos saying, "Hey, it's me, Mark D."
There we go.
So it's just practical. I don't have a website or anything like that. I haven't found a need one really, and I've got a bio link that I think I gave you some.
Yeah.
Marketbeingfully.ca. I have an assessment that I do for people that absolutely opens eyes to which parts of your consciousness you're closed off to. So we divide the way you show up. So the be, do, have. It actually analyzes your state of being and where you're at, and gives open analysis to the gaps. And that's where I build the coaching foundations from, because there's 4 different values for fathers, and they happen to fall right in line with this assessment that I'm a certified coach for. So then we put in place some strategies how to build on those.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff, dude.
Yeah.
Any last words?
That's it. Thanks for speaking with me. Thanks to everybody listening, and we appreciate the time and respect. Love to all.
Oh yeah. Thank you. Thank you for being on.
Thank you for joining in on today's episode. If you enjoyed this, remember to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. They be saying I have my head in the clouds because I don't share the same views. I say just look up and see the beauty all around you, and you'll see the same truth.